Hey guys, how are y'all doing today? We're back for our third stream, and once again, Landon is with us.
Hello. How are you guys? Well, I can't have an answer to that. But how are you, Karen?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Ready to play some Viva Pinata. And this week we decided to make things a little bit more organized. So we've got an actual topic, but we've got some stuff we want to do first. And Landon's going to basically kind of help me manage what we're talking about. So once again, just like last week, reach out to her if you want to actually come on stream and discuss anything with us, or if you have role play questions or anything like that. But while she's kind of getting that going, I'm gonna get the game started. We're playing Viva Pinata once again.
Yay. Oh, you are freezy a little bit, just so you
Um,
know.
okay. Like, is it still freezing?
Uh, is the video buffering? Maybe that's on my side.
Um,
It says, oh, maybe it's me.
well,
Sorry.
that's okay. That is okay. Um, Anybody that's in the chat already, that's in the chat kind of early, if you guys are seeing the same, freezing issues that Landon is seeing, let me know and I'll try to like maybe stop and restart the stream or something like that. Um, See if we can get that fixed. My internet should be strong right now. I'm the only one using the internet at the moment, so we shouldn't have that type of issue. So if we are, something's going on. How's it look to you, Landon? Is it kind of, did it clear
It
up?
is. It's still freezing for me, but I think that might be me. So
Okay,
let me do a full restart, and then I will be back in a minute. I'm sorry that this is happening right now.
that's okay. I will get started with the game. So while we wait
Cool.
for Landon, I'll just give y'all kind of a recap of where we were. We had just gotten, I think it was our second sour. I think the Tower of Sour is behind me. Uh, let's see. Yeah. So we had just gotten our second sour pinata, the Crola, and so we're gonna be trying to get our next one. We're gonna try to level up enough to get our next one anyway here today. So let's go see what pinatas we can work on. So we've gotten a lot of these. Let's see. Who would be good? Who would be good to get? We could work on some stuff with the flutterscotches. We definitely are going to need those. Let's build a flutterscotch house here. We're going to go to Willie and we're going to go get that house just like we have for all of the others. The flutterscotches are really unique in this game, and they come basically in a rainbow of colors. So I really like them, but you do end up having to like do the awards like kind of over and over when it comes to those flutterscotches. So you guys will see once we get started on them kind of what I mean by that. Let's actually just put him. Let's put him kind of in the middle of the garden. Yeah, that looks nice. All right, so he'll build that, and then we can start breeding some flutterscotches. Let's go see what they need to be able to breed. So they need to eat any piece of fruit. I think it's probably just fruit in their house. So let's go get some fruit. We're just gonna buy some. I'm not gonna worry about like growing it or anything complicated like that. We're just gonna go buy some fruit. Yeah, let me know. Those of you that have watched before that are returning, let me know what you think about the new set. This is the new set that we're going to be using for videos and for streams and all of that good stuff. So let me know if y'all like it. I think the new lights look really good. They look much better than the smaller string lights that I had for a while. Uh,
I like them.
oh, Landon, hey, welcome back.
Thank you. I was just appreciating your new set with you.
Thank you. Did rebooting fix it?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully that's all good and it's not my internet being crazy. I plug the computer, like I wire it into the modem to try to kind of help with that.
Oh yeah. Well, it might also be Spectrum. I know you probably don't have Spectrum down there, but
Yeah.
I always just like to blame Spectrum.
Oh god. Well, we've had it before. I've had Spectrum before and they're freaking awful.
Oh, they're
So,
terrible, and
yeah.
yet
Like
I'm
heaven
stuck
forbid
with
you
them.
ever have a problem and have to call them. It's the worst.
Yep, they're known for the worst customer service available. So
Yeah.
gotta love
Yes,
it.
for sure.
All
Okay.
right.
So if it's all good, then I think we can go ahead and get started. What did we want to cover first?
Ooh, let me open that tab.
Okay.
So what we were gonna do, so we talked about that we're doing supernatural species. Did you talk about that?
Oh, no. So the topic this week, we're going to talk all about supernatural species. We've got some different things that we want to talk about. Like we'll talk about our favorites and some questions that I see a lot surrounding supernatural species, and just kind of our opinions on that type of thing in roleplay. And I would love to know you guys' opinions too. If you have anything that you want to share with us, I would love to hear about it. Chat us about it, or let us know.
Please do. Let us know either on Discord or in the chat, or if you want to come on air, we can totally have a conversation about it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but I think first we want to start about what our favorite things of the week were.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So while people are kind of getting in and we're just sort of hanging out, we wanted to start sharing like favorite things of the week. So I have a confession.
Oh,
I have a confession. My favorite thing this week, I don't know how many of y'all have seen, but Belle Delphine is back. And Landon, do you know who Belle Delphine is? Have you heard of her
no,
before? Okay.
I have not.
So Belle Delphine is essentially an e-girl, right? So
Oh,
so she is an e-girl online, but the thing with her that kind of makes her somewhat unique is that she doesn't actually show anything, right? Like she blurs everything out. So the other thing that's unique about her is that she panders a lot to like the 4chan crowd, right? And so a lot of her stuff is memes. And the very first time I encountered her was her like just eating a raw egg, and it was so gross, and I was so like disgusted with it, and I was like, why is this girl popular? Why is this girl popular? I don't understand. I don't get it. However, then she disappeared for like almost a year. And now she's back, and she released a music video. And I can't stop listening to the stupid music video. I can't stop. I can't stop. It's
that's how they
awful.
get you.
It is. So like, she's around and she's super popular, right? And I'm just always like, I don't get it. I don't know why she's so popular. I don't know why everybody likes her. She's not appealing. Da 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 da. And then she releases something that I freaking love. And I
Well,
can't stop.
to be honest, I can understand. I just Googled her. I can understand why you would like her. She has pink hair.
She does.
She's very on brand, it seems,
um
for something that you would like.
I mean, she is. She's very, very cutesy, right? She's very cutesy in her look and everything like that. But like I said, a lot of times she's memeing and doing those sorts of things. So
Makes
it was a
sense.
little bit like kind of cringy to me, right? But she was very popular and she was making bank, right? So more power to you. More power to you. She found her market and she made that money.
She's
Which
so
is
young. She's
yeah,
20 years old.
yeah, she is. She got started very, very young. Um, yeah. So that is my confession. Is this song? This song is such an earwig, and if you're under 18, please don't watch it because it is kind of lewd. But it doesn't actually show anything, right? It doesn't actually show anything. It's just very suggestive, and and I found out later that part of the reason that I like this song so much is because it's by the same person that did that. Okay, I know I've linked this song a gajillion times, but I don't know if you've ever actually clicked on it to watch it. So I'll just do the first little part and you tell me if you know what I'm talking about. But it's like, it
Yeah.
starts out like, rar. That
Oh,
song is by the same girl, and I think that's why I love it so much. So yeah, if you like that song, but you don't
what
like
is
Belle Delphine, maybe you should actually go watch Belle Delphine's new song.
is her song on YouTube?
Yeah, so both of these videos that I'm talking about are on YouTube, and actually, for
Okay.
anybody that's in my Discord, I just linked both of them in
You were
the
doing that.
adult. Oh, yep, there it goes. Let's not play it on stream because I don't
No,
want
I
us to
wasn't
get.
going to. I was literally just trying to get the link so that if we wanted to link it for the NSFW.
Yeah, I just did. I just did before the stream started.
Okay.
So, if y'all are interested in that, if you want to know what I'm talking about, it's in the not safe for work area of my Discord server. So you can
That's
go and watch it if you want to.
hysterical.
So yeah, that's been my favorite thing this week, and I'm a little bit ashamed, but we're being authentic, right? So I'm just gonna speak my truth. That was my favorite thing this week. It really was.
I 100% understand that because I get it. And also like the internet is just full of beautiful moments and beautiful things like that.
Right, like beautiful, horrible, cringy things that we all love, for some
Isn't that
reason.
isn't that the definition of beauty or something like that at
Something
this
like that.
point?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it is. I feel like it is, right?
Yeah.
So, what was your
Uh,
favorite thing this week, Landon?
oh, well mine kind of has to do with memes too.
Oh,
And so just just under the realm of funny, it's memes who inspire things. So
okay.
that is so for me in this particular instant, a friend of mine on Facebook, in a moment of him being a wonderful self-deprecating human being, reposted a meme that basically said, "Name all the reasons why you're hard to date." There would be, and then he was like, "There's too many."
Mm-mm.
And then I wrote a poem about that. And I was like, this is nice. I like memes and these like shareable internet moments that then inspire art from them.
I love it. I love it. Do you
Yeah.
have do you want to share the poem? I would love to hear it.
Oh, I mean I can. I haven't written it's not finished.
Oh, okay. Well,
But
maybe
I will
you can share it
gladly share
later.
some of it.
Okay. I think that'd
How
be
about
good.
that?
Yeah.
And also like I apologize to the viewers that I am just also depressing sometimes, especially when it comes to my writing. I personally like to make depressive feelings happen. So this is sad. Anyway.
I mean, it's like that's role play, right? Like we all just want to hurt our characters, right? It's the same
Oh,
thing, I think.
100%. I've also like discovered as a writer and an artist that the easiest way to like affect someone is to make them sad. It's really hard to get someone to be inspiredly and like happy
Mm.
about something that you've created.
Mhm.
But being sad or emotional is really easy or easier to tap into. So I'm just like, let me write depressing emo poetry. Also, am I secretly a 16-year-old girl? Maybe.
I
You'll
mean,
never know.
have we ever really grown up, right?
I don't think so. Anyway, this is the first part of the poem. I will read that.
Okay.
So it's one. I am content with the black and gray shirt that sits in the middle of my kitchen floor. I do not mind changing the direction of my sweeping path to accommodate it, nor do I mind tiptoeing lightly over it in the middle of the night on my way to the bathroom, afraid to wake it in fear that it will scold me for letting it exist there for too long. Just like I do not mind creeping around the left shoe in the hallway, or the stepping the bra in the living room. I am so compliant that I will let the dregs of my iced tea glass perch upon the armrest, and the spoon for my cereal I ate 3 days ago rest on my nightstand, separated from the bowl that is found by my bedroom door. I feel eclectic in my chaos, and it is impolite to expect or allow someone else to clean up the mess.
Oh.
So that is what I have.
Oh. I mean, I definitely get like the emo teenager vibes, but I don't know. It was
Thank you.
definitely better than the stuff that I wrote as an emo teenager. I mean, obviously, I never kept up with any sort of poetry or anything like that, right? But you obviously have, and so I would
I
love
think
to
that
hear when it's done, like the full thing.
100%. I think that's part of my brand is like to just step up that 16-year-old teenage emo
Mm-mm.
poetry and just be like, what is one step above this? And then that's where I'm at as far as like artistic wise.
I love it. I'm here for it. I think it's great.
So yeah, gotta love memes that inspire things, and then also gotta love people who like to meme. I think that's what we've learned this week.
Definitely. And I have a small theory, right? I have a small
Mm.
theory. So part of Belle Delphine's meme, right, is that she died, right? Like she disappeared from the
Oh,
internet because she died. So I proposition, what if Belle Delphine is a banshee in the style of an Atlantis banshee?
oh, I could see. You know what? I see it though.
So maybe she came
Actually,
back and she's trying to find her purpose now.
can I go even farther with this conspiracy theory?
Yes, please
I
do.
think every e-girl is a banshee.
Oh, maybe. Oh,
because like
maybe.
there's something hauntingly beautiful about them, but also super sad.
Yeah.
Like that's just kind of like obviously the persona of an e-girl that I'm like, no, these are definitely like banshee type things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So to give some context to you guys, we're currently
Mm.
running a supernatural role play, and banshees is one of the species that you can choose for your character. And when it comes to a banshee, what makes them unique is that they have died, and in that death, they have discovered that they have some unfinished business, and so essentially they come back, and they can't die again until they finish that business, right? So, I
Which
think
is
it
a
makes a lot of
fantastic
sense.
trope.
Sorry?
Well, it's a fantastic trope, right?
Yeah.
And in our RP, we have anyone from people who like have to finish, I think, have to finish like a writing a book
Mhm.
to just people who have to like pass on a message.
Mhm.
And it can be anything in between. It can even be like your unfinished business is conquering the world if you can give us a reasonable reason for that being true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it just explains this really cool built-in plot that's with banshees, and I really like that.
Yeah, I do too. And I've been thinking about like, I would love to bring in my character Vivian, there or that I've played in other role
Yeah,
plays, and if I did, I feel like she would make such a good banshee.
she'd make a
I don't have
great
time for
banshee.
another character right now, but I think that sometimes, like, oh, if I were to bring her, she'd make such a good banshee. I could figure out some good unfinished business for her.
Listen though, bring her in anyway. It's fine. Protect her. Doesn't matter. Just bring her in. We need
Right.
more redheads. That's
Oh
what
my
we need.
god. No, we don't. Oh my god. Yeah. Landon.
Atlantis, the place where redheads exist.
Ah. Yeah. So for anybody that's watching this or watching this back, Landon, if you could, can you link the document in the chat that has all the species so that anybody that wants to go like read more can easily do that and follow what we're talking about with this Belle Banshee theory.
Well, yes, I
Thank you.
can.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then also like when you re-upload this to YouTube, you should make sure to put that in the description below.
I will. On the YouTube VODs, it will have a link down in the description to
Mm.
this document because we're gonna probably reference it later. Like this probably isn't the last time we're gonna reference it.
And also, speaking to those people who are watching it on the YouTube VOD, be sure to come to Twitch and subscribe to this Twitch channel so you can watch us live instead of watching us later.
Yes, please
That
give
way
us
you
a
can
follow.
participate in the fun.
Yes, give us a follow. We're trying to do around noon to 2ish every single Saturday. So that's the goal at the moment. And so far, we've done it for 3 weeks. So that's working out pretty well, I would say.
I've liked it.
Yeah,
It's a good time.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so we've talked about our favorite things for the week. So perhaps we should discuss some parts of our topic.
Yes, okay. Supernatural creatures. I know that when we first said in the Discord that this was what we were going to talk about, we did have some kind of interest in some things that people were curious about. So, what do we want to start with? I know there was a couple things.
Well, I think that we should personally start with what is our favorite like fantasy species or
Oh,
supernatural species.
okay.
Um, and I kind of separate it into to play and then to also read because I think that there are some
Oh.
species that are really really cool and I want to like be interested in the plot, and then there are some that I'm just like I could never write that, but do I love reading it? Yes, I do.
Okay, okay, I like that, and I do think there's a distinction there. So yeah, why don't you start with your first one you want to talk about, and then I'll jump in with some of mine.
All right. Well, I think like here's the thing. Vampires are classic.
That's true.
And there are so many good tropes that come with vampires,
Hmm.
right? You have the murderous kind, you have the really old kind, you have the one, personally, one of my favorites,
Hmm.
being a really, really old vampire meets a really newborn
Uh-huh.
vampire, and then they fall in love. Claraline, I don't know what I'm talking about.
I
Anyway.
mean, I didn't see that. I didn't see you saying that coming at all.
Not once did I think I would bring up one of my favorite ships in the world.
No,
Um,
never.
and then also with vampires, there's something beautifully like they just seem to be in fights with every other kind of supernatural creature.
It's true.
Like,
That's true.
vampires and werewolves don't like each other. I'm pretty sure vampires and like sirens probably don't like each other because there's competition on the food chain there.
Probably not, yeah.
Um, I feel like to play, every RPer at some point should play a vampire. It
I
should just be one of those things.
I would agree with that. I'm Googling right now how much I'm supposed to give him. This guy, like, he'll open a shop for you if you give him a certain amount of coins, like, because he's a beggar right now and he needs coins to open his shop. So I'm just Googling right now,
Mm.
because I don't want to give him too little and then have to wait longer to unlock this. So sorry for the small interruption. I was just explaining
Oh,
why the game looks paused. It's not really paused.
you're good. I think that's wonderful. Like the wonderful thing about the internet and being able to just Google answers like that.
Mm.
That's one of the hard things I have with playing video games is not knowing exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Oh,
Like
sometimes that's the fun
I know
part,
that
though.
I is it?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And see, this is why I don't play video games. This is why I'm an omniscient voice here and not a video gamer.
Oh my gosh. I like that. I like figuring it out because it's like a puzzle, right? And you don't always know what the answer is.
I don't so here's the thing, right? I have Game oh my gosh, Game of Thrones. I meant Kingdom Hearts, but out came Game of Thrones.
Oh,
Kingdom Hearts.
hey. Oh, no, you're good. You're good, Marina. I know, I totally
Oh,
understand. And we had to bug off this morning. So I get that you had some important stuff to do.
how dare you? Just kidding. I love you. We're talking about Kingdom Hearts. Well, I'm
Yes.
currently talking about Kingdom Hearts, but it's an off tangent from the important subject.
It's 1,000
Um,
coins.
1,000 coins. It's so many coins.
Yeah. It's not, though, in the grand scheme of things. We're going to get a lot of benefits from the stuff that he sells us. Okay, sweet. So he's going to be
Fair enough.
unlocked. Okay, yes. Kingdom Hearts.
So, yeah. Oh no, like there's a boss there that just I could play them. It was in the very beginning of the game,
Uh huh.
and I played it probably for like 3 days. And
Oh,
that
wow.
was just too much to me that I couldn't beat this first boss. It was the Alice in Wonderland boss for anyone who played Kingdom Hearts.
Okay.
And it was just so hard and I hated it so much, so I googled to figure out how to beat it, and then I realized that I enjoyed the game so much better when I knew what I was doing and how to do things.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have a small opinion on this. Dang it, I was too late. I don't think there's one right way to play video games. Like I don't think
Mm.
like you're bad for looking up secrets or things like that. But I have to say, oh no, that's so sad. We've got too many pinatas in the garden probably. But I will say I do enjoy figuring things out on my own somewhat. Um, definitely there always reaches a certain point where it's like, okay, I'm just annoyed and I'm gonna Google it. Um, but I like to try to figure it out for myself. The only reason I Googled the Ivor thing is because, we're on stream and I don't want to be, I don't want to wait. And I've done this before and I knew basically what I was supposed to do. I just couldn't remember the amount of coins. Landon, what picture was that supposed to be?
I did not mean to do that. It was a shame, shame, shame
Oh,
thing because I was interacting with Marina and then it just like decided to do that and now I'm being made fun of. Thank you.
why are you such a boomer? What the hell?
I am. I'm such a boomer. But here's the thing. No, that's not true. I'm not a boomer. I'm a millennial, and
Yeah.
millennials are also stupid sometimes.
Well,
So
that's
it's
true.
fine.
That's true. Sometimes I feel like when I say that, I feel like it's not, the person is actually a boomer. It's like sometimes like the internet and technology moves so fast that even I feel like I'm being like behind, you know?
It's true. Although I have to say it is a pet peeve because I'm a nanny and I have two boys who are 11, no, 12 now,
Oh
and
wow.
7, and they love to call me a boomer, and it just fills me with so much rage because I'm like, you don't even understand that I'm not a boomer. I don't care if an 18-year-old is doing it. I don't care if a 15-year-old is doing it because at least they have a concept of what a boomer actually is. But the 7-year-old and the 11, 12-year-old, I'm just like, I can't handle it.
Yeah, but when you're like 12 years old, like you don't know. Somebody that's 20 years old seems just as old as somebody who's like 40 years old, right? Like you don't freaking know.
It's true. 20-year-olds did seem particularly old when I was 12.
Yeah.
And now as a 26-year-old, I'm
And
like,
you're like, wow, what was I thinking?
I don't even know what to do anymore. What day is it?
Mystery, mystery. Who knows? Okay, so
Anyway,
Kingdom Hearts. So you Googled it and you felt like the game was more fun after you knew what the hell
100%.
was
And
going
so
on.
and so I just like followed the tutorials all the way through. And now it still is hard to beat and still good to beat, but at least that way I knew what I was doing.
Mm,
And
okay, understood.
that was my tangent. Anyway, did you want to go back to fantasy species?
Yes,
And
yes. Okay,
I said one of mine to favorite to play. What's one of your favorites to play?
okay. So, Marina, just to catch you up, because what you missed
Oh,
was like about playing vampires because they're, they're so, they're so old, right, and ancient. And there's so many good tropes. So I just wanted to add to that real quick. I think that vampires are wonderful in regard to here we go. We're gonna open the shop, so that's gonna be awesome. I think
yay!
vampires are really wonderful way to play with like class dynamics and
Mm,
storylines that are about oppression and loss and things like that because they're literal bloodsuckers, right? Like they're literal bloodsuckers. They're taking the life force out of their victim. So that's something that I really love about vampires is vampires as a metaphor for like somebody somebody's life force being taken away in some regard. That's a wonderful choice. But you know what I gotta go with. You know what I gotta go with for mine.
I have a feeling.
Werewolves,
Okay.
and I freaking love the concept, the idea of this this person or this creature who doesn't fully have agency over themselves at some point. I find that concept so fascinating about how most of the time they can just be a regular person who is going about their life and they're doing their things and da 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 and everything's all cool. But then once a month, when the full moon is here, all of a sudden they don't have that self control. They kind of are going back to that baser instinct, and I just find that concept so interesting, and the different ways that that can potentially play out in reality. I feel like is is just really fun to explore.
I think the concept is a huge, like, it's really fun too.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I think like also making it that your character is closer to animal than human during some other parts of the month, and that
Yep.
there's like this greater animal drive, also it like lends itself to being a really creative and interesting character.
Yep.
However, I what I particularly love about werewolf um, lore and writing it is the pack dynamics. Now, I'm not
Mm.
talking like that kind of pack dynamic. Doesn't have to be. But like as far as like still having the idea of an alpha, having the idea of a leader of a pack, and having like this family sworn into that you're sworn into because you're a pack of werewolves, um, is a really really cool outlet, and I think can also lend itself to some great storytelling that I really like
Yeah.
and appreciate both reading and writing.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because it gives you kind of this built-in hierarchical family dynamic, right? And our world is already structured in most ways in a very hierarchical sense. So I think like the idea of taking that and embodying it in this small family unit where you can really see the individuals that are at play there. I do think that's really interesting too. Um, because it kind of like it puts this structure around around a friend group. Essentially it puts this very specific structure around a friend group, and then you can create all kinds of drama with that, right?
Exactly. Um, and then like also like for me currently I write Rab, who is obviously a werewolf, who doesn't have a pack and feels very, and he also feels in his real life too very family less.
Yeah.
Um, and so having like also that sort of dynamic to sit there and have the lone wolf and the
Mm,
outsider is
mm-hmm.
also a really interesting thing that I think can be deeply explored with werewolves.
Yeah. And I think that's very it's very true of like most people too, right? Like most people could not just live by themselves. They need some kind of connection to some people. You know, I'm sure it's it's different for each person how many people that needs to be, or what kind of structure that might need to be. But at the end of the day, most people cannot be all by themselves. They need at least one other person. Oh no.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, what's happening? There's a fight in the garden. Oh, these
Oh
guys are fighting.
no.
So some of the pinatas in this game, they don't get along with each other, like the arachnids and the firefly ones, they don't get along. So that's what's going on. But that's okay. It'll just give me a chance to show you guys how the doctor works. We're gonna call the doctor essentially. Once they finish fighting. I wish it would let me get out of this screen. I don't need to watch the whole fight.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, the link in Discord was not working, so I was correcting that.
Oh,
So
okay, you're good. Yeah, link that in the chat so that people know like what we're talking about. Because I think we are talking about supernatural species in a general sense, but also
yeah,
because we're running that role play right now. If we say anything that doesn't jive, I think that document will help people
yes.
understand.
Um, and yeah, I think especially vampires and werewolves, and we'll
Oh
get into
yeah,
this a little bit later as far as like how to then create and what rules to break and follow when
yeah.
writing these species. But I do think that those are two incredibly like solid characters or solid species that should be in any sort of supernatural species roleplay.
Yeah, and I think people expect to see them, right? Like people expect to see
Yeah.
them, so you have to have something like that. Um,
Um, and
for
then
sure.
yeah, I've actually particularly loved playing, and this is one that is unique to you and your. Sorry, cat is going crazy.
He just wants
And
to join
your
in.
he's just he's like other people who knew are sirens. I
Oh.
had never even considered like I had always linked and glued together merfolk and sirens
Hmm.
and always thought that they were too close to really separate or anything like that. But I love in this current RP and the way that it's been made the fact that like they're cannibalistic and that there's almost like a prejudice towards them because of that fact.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of history and a lot of ostracization that I think is just very, very interesting to play within the idea of a supernatural world. I'm not sure if they would be a good hit. I think I would struggle playing them if it was a hidden
Hmm.
sort of thing. I think that would be a lot harder,
Hmm.
but because we play them out in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Maddie, how you doing? Um, so, so yeah, I think that the sirens is something that, funny enough, I developed that with. Hey, yeah, Matt, we can see ya. We can see ya. The sirens is something that I actually developed with Naomi in a particular role play that we did, where we wanted to
Mm,
have like that specific dynamic, and they just kind of grew from there, as far as that goes. And I wanted to have something that was, a little bit more explicit, right? Oh my! So one of the pinatas that was in the fight should be sick somewhere. So that's what I'm trying to find right now. Um, I wanted to have something that was a little bit more explicit, right? Because if these supernatural creatures, in this game needed a spot for them to be able to survive, away from the humans of the world, then that means there must be some reason, right? There's some kind of issue going on there, and I think sirens is a really good example of that. They're not able to live among humans, really, not realistically, in a city or something, because that's literally their food source, like directly their food source. They can't eat without killing somebody. This game is called Viva Pinata, Maddie, and essentially what you're doing is building a garden with a bunch of lovely pinatas in it. And kind of while I'm doing this, because my channel and everything is all about roleplay help and advice. Landon and I are talking about some different roleplay stuff. This week we're talking about supernatural species and how that kind of plays into different roleplay things that we do.
yeah, and if you have any opinions on that, we love to hear those too.
Absolutely.
Um, And then I also think sorry, just to, because my mind is going everywhere. A staple that I think we also needed to mention was witches.
Oh yeah,
Right? Vampire, werewolf, witches are the bread and butter of supernatural species.
absolutely.
Uh,
That's
and
like the
they're fantastic.
trifecta, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're fantastic. I love, I think witches in general, there's so many different avenues and ways that it can be played
hmm
that is just incredible and just allows for both the world builder as well as the player to sit there and be like, okay, how do I want to expand? What do I want to reach? What do I want to do with this character? And how can those powers really tell that story?
hmm Because it's well, the way that we're doing it anyway in our role play is that it's elemental, right? Like the witches
Yeah.
are like elemental magic, and you know we have different kinds of magic in that particular role play, but a witch kind of gives you a catch-all, right? It's kind of like whatever type of magic you're missing or might need to introduce or that would be fun to explore, you can always say like, okay, well that's the realm of witches, right? Because it's so ubiquitous and so and so kind of you know it's just like a catch-all term. It's a good catch-all term.
Yeah, it really is. And because their magic is so personal,
Yeah,
you really can use it as a writing device,
you
which
absolutely
I
can.
feel like, yes, you can with certain other species, especially like vampires. It's their age, it's what they've learned over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Werewolves, it's that pack dynamic, it's that animalistic features. Directly with witches, it's you can use it as a storytelling device of they started out weak and they grew strong, or they grew
Mm.
strong, they blew themselves, or anything like that.
Hey
So
Maddie, I don't really I'm more paying attention to, you know, the conversation, like what's happening in the chat and also in, you know, in the game and stuff. So I don't really pay attention to how many viewers we have, but if you are liking what you see, I would love if you'd give us a follow so that you can make sure that you're always here being a viewer with us. But yeah, I don't really look at how many viewers we have at any given time. Sorry, I really just watch the chat messages.
I just appreciate the time
Yeah.
and the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, good. We're getting a shovel upgrade. Yes. So that guy
Yay!
that just showed up a second ago, that's called a ruffian, and they'll come and
Mm.
like put sour candies around your garden and basically make your pinata sick. So we're gonna try to get rid of him. There are ways to get rid of him. I
We
want to
love a good old
see.
fashioned villain.
Yeah. So he's one of the ones that will come and like wreck your garden. So let me see if Ivor has some of the stuff for that. I don't want to buy that. Let's go back. Yeah,
I
the
like that
other.
they're red and not green. I'm sorry, my inner Slytherin was just like, oh
Ah!
man, bad guys that are red? Heck yeah.
That's too funny. That is too funny. Yeah, he
I
doesn't
mean,
have the thing. So he'll sell us a thing later that will help get rid of the ruffians so they don't come into the garden, but he doesn't have it yet. So we're just gonna have to deal with
gotcha.
those. We're just gonna have to deal with those as they show up.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
I
like
like the dude's hair.
the Ivor's hair. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really super cool. One of the
Um,
other species that I've been really enjoying, and I didn't think necessarily that I would be so drawn to reading about them when I first created them, but the pixies, what people have done with having a
yeah.
transmutation magic character has like really blown my mind. You know what I mean? Um, I was not expecting people to take like those aspects so far. It's been really wonderful to watch.
And this is when I'm gonna shout out a couple writers in our group. And it's no offense to everybody else who writes pixies in our group, but what Zine and Sasha have done
Yeah,
with the lore and the characters that they have created has
yeah,
been magical, like for lack of a better word, magical
yeah,
to
absolutely.
just read and engage with. And I think that it's a I love it, and it was, I agree with you, it was like, oh okay, pixies are cool, I guess.
Yeah,
And now reading it, I'm like, I want to read all of these characters.
yeah. Like it's just, you know, sometimes like you make something and you don't really necessarily think about it. Like in my mind, I was just like, oh, well, you know, we don't really have transmutation magic. Um, represented. We don't have a way for people to do that if they want to, so let's add that in. Like, and that's literally all the thought that went into it, right? And I was like, oh, pixies, Tinkerbell will, alchemical dust, and yay, that's awesome, Maddie. I'm so glad we did. Alchemical dust, and then it was like, oh, well, Tinkerbell, like, she dies without attention, so let's put that aspect in there, and it's like all about, the way that a pixie survives is by getting attention, and so, it would just kind of, I put those elements together and I didn't really think beyond that. I was just like, these are elements the role play's missing. Let's put these into this particular one. But what has happened with it, with the characters of Piero, and also with Adrelai, I think is how you actually say it.
I say
It's been amazing. How do you
it's
say it?
I nicknamed it Adra is how I'm pronouncing it, but
Oh
I am
yeah.
also like whatever it is.
Maddie,
Um,
that's okay. We're not really too concerned. Like, if people want to come hang out with us, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. Like, it's not like that. It's just me and Landon hanging out, and if other people want to come in, they totally can.
Maddie, do you have a favorite supernatural species at all that you enjoy writing with?
I know
Yes, ma'am.
Marina does. I know Marina does. If you wanted to talk about that a little bit, Marina, let Landon know, or if you just want to in the chat, tell us. I can read it out. I know you have a favorite. You talk about it all the time, so I would love to get your
Oh,
opinion on stream somehow. However you want to do it, however you're comfortable.
I was waiting for her to bring up the mer peoples.
Yes.
Gas melting in your pocket.
Yes, mermaids. Mermaids
Oh, I love
are
them.
are awesome, and I love the way that you do this kind of like fish out of water thing with your mermaid character Eugene. So so yeah, he's wonderful.
Looks like I need to order.
And
He
mermaids is an oh sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say he is. I was also gonna just say mermaids were very interesting. They're one of the species that I really love reading about, but I'm not sure I can ever play or write as.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know why, but I'm like it's something that I connect to as far as in fiction, but something I can't write, and I love reading about Eugene because I think he's wonderful.
Yeah, I definitely think mermaids is that for me. I think I vibe a lot more with like the siren side or this, and also the
Hmm.
selkie side of kind of the sea creatures. Not as much with the mermaid side, but I love mermaids. Yeah. So Marina says I always loved Little Mermaid when I was little, and that obsession never diminished, just became more detailed. Yeah. I mean, I think the Little Mermaid, for the age that I was when it came out, it was like one of the first like Disney movies I can really remember watching, and I just thought she looked so cool, right, with the bright red hair and like the green tail, and I thought her colors were so amazing. What y'all probably don't know. Oh shoot, I meant to do the red one. That's okay. What y'all probably don't know is that I actually had red hair for a little bit in middle school and high school, and I'm not gonna lie, like that was a lot of that was inspiration from Ariel. And when Little Mermaid came out, like I was Ariel for Halloween, right? So I do have somewhat of an affinity for mermaids, even though I don't play one, and I don't think I would create one in the current role play that we're doing.
Yeah, I'm so not surprised by you having red hair at some point. But I mean, I also knew you during your pink phase,
You did.
so like I did.
Looks like
And we would
Um,
still be in that pink phase if we didn't have dress code at work, right?
that is true. If you could,
Yeah,
you
if I
still would
could.
have pink hair.
Yep. Unfortunately, though, they want natural hair colors only, so I don't have the pink hair anymore. You can't really even see it anymore, even though technically the bottom of this is still from the pink, because of course I have not gotten a haircut in freaking forever because of COVID. Um, but yeah, you
But
can't tell.
yeah, I appreciate being able to tell also the way Marina is like telling the Little Mermaid, being able to retell those stories. I think the supernatural aspect of it really allows for the retellings of stuff like that,
Yeah.
and being able to bring more of characters from other fandoms
Yeah.
into the world of RP where their fandom where it's going to be an OC rather than a or a character rather than a an original character or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair for sure. And the other thing that I really love about using supernatural species just in general is I think it gives us this like ability to take whatever it is that we want to write, whatever story it is that we want to write, or whatever feature it is that we want to write, and like exaggerate it, right? Like it kind of by the nature of it being supernatural, um, kind of like cartoonifies it, right? In the same way that like a musical is like bigger and more cartoonish than a play, right? Adding in supernatural species to a role play kind of makes it more dramatic by nature, right? So of course I love that. So we got to be super dramatic all the time.
I mean, isn't that just the point?
For sure.
To just be as dramatic as possible all of the time.
For sure.
Um, yeah, I agree with you. I think that it's just I love supernatural species and like powers and all of that within the real world.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like, I feel like CW had a very big, like, supernatural shows stage, and I know they still have, like, legacies on there, but who watches that, right? Nobody watches that.
It's true.
And that's kind of ended now. They're more onto superheroes, but I still wore, like, even though I haven't watched this in many seasons, I still wore, like, my supernatural shirt, right? Like, this is by an artist. I can't remember what the artist's name was, but I got it off of T Fury, which sells a lot of artist prints in their shirts, and it's Dean and Sam
Oh,
drawn in Hello Kitty style, and it says moose and squirrel, right?
yes. I love T Fury, by the way.
It's
I or
great.
I did. I used to love him. I haven't really followed it in a while, but it was awesome.
Mm-hmm. So Marina says, magic, unexpected skills. I guess my mermaid still has a few underappreciated acrobatic skills, but that's because on legs he hasn't got the grace of a freshly yeah, he's got the grace of a freshly hatched duckling. Yes.
Um,
Yeah, for sure. I guess in my mind, I do kind of associate like the kind of aquatic supernatural species like mermaids and selkies with fitness. Like I even wrote that explicitly into the Selkies, which I don't think is anything that other people typically do. But if y'all want to steal it, like feel free, right? But when it comes to Selkies, like they're kind of like the jocks, right? And they're very all about like the going to the gym and things like that. But I kind of think that bleeds over to mermaids somewhat too. I do think of them as very, graceful and acrobatic and physically fit and all of these things. And for some reason, I associate the water with that.
well, I think also the thing with Selkies, right, is that they're marine mammals.
Yes,
And if we think of the marine mammals that exist, they're all incredibly strong,
that's
except for
true.
like there is an argument to be said that like a dolphin doesn't necessarily. I mean, they are very strong, but I guess dolphin is more feminine than any. I at least attribute it to a more feminine idea
Yeah,
than any of the other marine mammals. So I'm
yeah.
like everything else, they all make sense as to being jocks, 100%. I'm like walrus, whales, seals. Sorry, someone's blowing up my phone.
Someone really wants to talk to you. Tell them to come on stream and talk to you instead there.
Who would though?
Oh my gosh.
um, but yeah, I think I really like that idea of also like just Selkies being at the gym hanging out is
Mm-hmm.
something that I love, especially as I'm just like as someone who plays a Selkie, I'm like Owen is a jock. he was
Mm-hmm.
he was a jock in a past life.
I mean, I put Ludo as a Selkie because I wanted to, because he's always like sports, yeah. So of course he had to be a Selkie, right? Um, to keep that motif going.
Oh, Ludo, picture you.
Yes.
Um, I think so. I think one of the supernatural creatures that is new to me and that you have written also into your lore is shifters.
Mm.
I had always like been like, well, just make it werewolves or weres, and
Mm-hmm.
then just have it that they could shift anytime, and they
Mm.
had to shift on the new moon or on the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would be a shifter. And then, but the way you've written it in the lore is being able to have multiple different animals, as well as be not being like tied to anything, and then also being cursed if they shift for too long is made it a very interesting species that I'd be like, oh, that's cool to want to write about.
Yeah, so the inspiration for that, for anybody that that's looked at the species that I've written, is probably pretty obvious. It's from Animorphs, right? And yeah, okay, we got the next sour. That's awesome. So they have this kind of technology element to them, which I don't think you get in a lot of supernatural type things. Like usually the supernatural is it's some natural somewhat, right? Is inherent in the name. But I think remembering that technology is an important element of our world that we live in now, and it's something that we can still play with in a modern setting. So so having them based off of that, the Animorphs with having like that technology element, I think has been really fun. And I play Haley as a shifter, even though in her canon she's a werewolf, right? And I could have very naturally put her as that, but I didn't want to. I felt like this was a little bit more freeing, a little bit different way to play her, and to give her some of that power through technology.
Yeah, I think so I have always separated technology with supernatural just because it seems natural to do that.
Yeah, I
So
think
I
it
think
does.
as far as a world building, it makes sense to combine the two. It just I don't know, there's also something really interesting about it. I think we play it a little bit with Abby and James being cousins. Like we talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
how because Shifter is built on by technology, they're
Yeah.
a different form of supernatural. They're
Yeah, they're
not
still a
as
person in a
bad.
way. They're still a
They're still
human
a
in a way.
person. Yeah. Whereas everything else that is either born or made is lesser than when it
Yeah.
comes to hunters. And I like that aspect of it too, is that it gives another level and another opportunity for the
Mm-hmm.
world building experience and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like when it comes to supernatural creatures, there's always the desire to add in a hunter element, right? Like there's humans out there that are dangerous to these supernatural creatures that are trying to kill them, right? Like that's a very
Mhm.
natural thing to add in. But to me, just adding in hunters, having hunters be an element of the world without understanding why doesn't sit well with me, right? And I do see that in a lot of role plays, or a lot of worlds that are not super fleshed out. I'll see elements that you expect to see in a supernatural role play just there because they're there, right? Like why would supernatural species be hunted, right? And I think that the justification for that in the world that we built together for the Atlantis roleplay is a lot is really there are certain species that are truly dangerous to people. They're truly dangerous, right? Like sirens and vampires and succubus are truly dangerous to people. They really are. So you can understand why if you've got this kind of wild animal that won't stop coming into city limits. Of course, you want to kill it, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so this actually kind of draws us into our next topic of the conversation because we were going to mention and talk about the idea of humans within the supernatural species realm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I have a connection with that as far as being like, I personally feel that if you are going to have a supernatural species, and you are going to include hunters, those hunters need to be humans, and the
Mm-hmm.
only humans that can be playable characters are hunters.
Mm. Okay.
Because if you look at it from this point of view, like if you add supernatural species, and what has made that trope, that idea, means that humans all of a sudden become mid-level food chain. They no
Oh,
longer are
yeah.
the top of the food chain. They're no longer the hunters, the biggest predator of the area. All of a sudden, vampires, sirens, everything, werewolves, even in some lores, are now hunting those humans, and those humans have become mid-level. That they need to have almost a secondary way of being able to protect themselves, and the only way to do that is to become hunters, in my
Mm.
opinion.
So I feel like kind of what you're saying there is like the act of creating a world that has these supernatural elements means that humans are no longer the top of the food chain. Whereas, of course, in our
100%.
world, we're the top of the food chain, right? Because we've developed certain technologies that mean that there's nothing that can kill us, right? Like if an animal happens to kill a person, it's usually because of something specific that person was doing, right? It's very easy to not die from an animal in our world, right?
Yeah, like even if you look at it, most of the animals that do end up killing us are wild animals that end up killing us. We are not their natural food source.
Yes.
We never were.
Yeah, it just kind
Um,
of we're in their territory and something has
yeah,
happened and that's kind of how it happens.
lions have the ability to kill us. However, they never really chose to go after humans. They wanted to go after other animals.
Yeah. Like I mean humans are
Even,
kind of bony, right? Like we're not really
yeah, exactly. We're not exactly satisfying to some of these animals.
right?
Um, so you introduce the idea of supernatural species. We'll take vampires, for example, because especially in literature, those are the ones that are directly hunting humans. They
Yeah.
have to live off of human blood, and up until recently, it had to be live human blood in most lore.
Yeah. Now that some things have changed of course in the past couple decades with that.
Blood
Of what's more
bags,
typical,
yeah.
but in the past that was how it was in vast majority of vampire fiction.
So that all of a sudden makes the human the prey, which then makes it that they are no longer top of the food chain. Something is actively hunting them.
Mhm.
Now, depending on the lore, depending on the writer, upon like what a vampire bite did. Some people could live through it. Some people said that it changed the human into a vampire. All of those kinds of things. It
Mhm.
was they suddenly humans became part of the danger, and that's part of what made these scary stories because supernatural species originally were existed to be fear to make humans fearful of them, right?
Right.
They're monsters in the dark. And
Yeah,
so
like don't go out into the woods, that sort of thing.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Dracula was originally a like scary story that was told in Eastern Europe, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah, something like
Um,
that.
so it just is. It's one of those things that if humans belong in that sort of role play and lore, I think we have to respect what has been done before when creating our worlds and understanding that like humans, a normal human character, unless you're specifically trying to play the plot of a human falls in love with a vampire, vampire falls in love with a human,
Yeah, but that's more
humans
like for
don't
one-on-one role play, right? Like that's not
exactly
really for a group, I would think.
humans don't belong within that
Yeah.
realm. I'm not saying that they don't belong in the world. It just they don't belong in as a playable character.
Yeah, so Marina has a little bit more details on that. The vampires are derived from legends of Vlad the Impaler. I mean, that totally makes sense, right? Like that
Yeah,
totally makes sense if you think of all of the things that Vlad the Impaler did historically and the stories surrounding him, how that could turn into a lot of the vampire stories that we have today. I think that makes perfect sense.
100%. And just like to even and boogeyman, like the idea of boogeyman and things in the dark and creatures in the dark were always meant to scare children and to make sure children were not wandering off out of
Yeah,
their homes in the middle of the night.
right. Absolutely.
Also
Um,
because humans love fear.
Also, I think when it comes to whether you should have humans in a supernatural role play, I think it's important to think about like why you're doing certain things, right? Like when you add in a major element to your role play, it's important to make sure of why you're doing it, right? Like it's not you're not just doing it because everyone else is doing it, right? Like I'm not saying you necessarily
Yeah,
need to know exactly why you're doing something or exactly how it's going to play out. Like I talked before about how I put in pixies literally because I thought we should have transmutation magic, represented and it went from there, right? But I don't ever think that a good reason to do something is because everyone else is doing it, right? Just because people expect it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you should do. Now, if you think about it, there are definitely times that you might want to do that because people expect it, because certain tropes go certain ways, and role play is a two-way street, so you want to make sure you're understood, right? But I don't think that you should do things just because everyone else is doing it. So when it comes to adding in humans, I think you really need to think about, okay, in my role play, the way it's set up, why would someone want to play a human, right? Why would someone look at my role play and look at the lore and think, I want to make a human, right? So if I
Well,
think of the plot of Atlantis, like it's a sanctuary for supernaturals, and I think of somebody that's like, well, I want to play a human there, I want to play a human tourist. First of all, tourists are temporary, like they're not going to stay there forever, so that's kind of like an premise. And then I think about it like, you know I can't help but feel, and maybe this is unfair, and you can tell me if you think I'm being unfair, but I can't help but feel like somebody that would want to play a human in this role play, what they're really looking for is to play a low stakes character where they don't really have to engage that much. They can just kind of hang out and chill and role play, and they never have to make any real decisions about their character. And so because of that, humans are not represented as player characters in Atlantis. They are only non-player characters, right? So I know
so
that was very long-winded, but that's the whole
no,
that's my whole point there, right?
it makes sense. I'm not sure if it would be a low stakes character, but I think it speaks to the idea of lack of consequence, right?
Yes, absolutely. I
If
think that's
we
probably a
look
better way to
at,
say it.
yeah, so it's somewhat, to me it would speak to somebody who didn't want to see their character hurt, because realistically within our game of Atlantis, to be specific, how long would a human last if they're going up against someone like Rab or someone like Haley
Yeah, they just
or
wouldn't. They just wouldn't.
someone like Elijah?
Yeah, and they're
They
not, no, because none of those
wouldn't.
characters are going to care. They're just a human. They're not going to
Exactly.
care.
They're just a human. So, but as an RPer, you also know that you have control over what happens, right? We don't god mod within our RP.
Yeah,
So you can't just kill a character without having the permission of the person that is writing it.
right.
So if that person doesn't want that character to die, but then also wants that character to interact with all of these people, they don't want consequences to happen to those characters.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be able to be special,
Yeah.
that special human, which is a total fine plot to play. Like, as we said earlier, to have that vampire, that 100-year-old vampire, fall in love with that human,
Yeah,
to
that's
have
fun.
that, human who desperately wants to be a supernatural creature.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is 100%, or doesn't. Like, if you started Abby as a human,
Mm-hmm.
and we played out her whole plot arc of being taken hostage and then tortured and then turned into a vampire. Like, that is an
Right.
interesting story, but does those stories belong within the greater story of the RP, the world? And then also, are those stories worth the risk of having someone come in and then say that they're creating a character for a greater supernatural purpose, and then that never happened?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's always something you have to worry about, right? Like, because you can't give yourself special treatment. Like, I can't. That's not fair, right? Because once you do it once, right? Like, once you let one
Yeah,
person, um, play a human, you have to let anybody play a human, right? Like, that's not right not to. Um, so so I would agree with that. Like, just because somebody that's been in the role play for a while, if they were to come to me and be like, I have this really amazing character idea, I have this really amazing plot idea, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really cool, but allowing them to do that would then open a certain floodgate of other people that would want to do something that is really comes from a lack of understanding of what the game is really about. Like, then we can't do it, right? Then we can't do
yeah,
it. And it's the same reason of why I'm always like, why I'm always so against like having people come back from the dead. Because so often it's used so cheesy. And I mean, we can talk about, so I'm wearing my supernatural shirt, right? Like, we can talk about that. How many times does Sam and Dean have to come back? Like,
right.
it's so stupid and tired, and you get so bored with it. You get so bored with it. So, certain things like that, and I think putting a human in a supernatural RP is like that in a sense. Like, it has to be very purposeful, and you have to
Yeah.
make sure that your game and your plot is structured around supporting any kind of player that might want to do that, right? Not just the
Yes,
ones that have that one specific cool plot that would be fine.
I agree. I also think, and not to like, what? No, actually, I'm gonna get on my little soapbox here for
Okay.
a second.
Okay, go get on your soapbox. Here, I'll put it down for you and you can stand
There's
on
a
that.
there's a lot of stereotypes and tropes that likes to be played out, right? RP is basically, for lack of a better sense of topic, and just to like sum it up, playing out tropes that you want to play with characters that you create.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the whole
So
thing.
those human vampire, human supernatural creature tropes, how many of them are weak human women with a man supernatural to protect her?
Yeah.
And so, like, also as like an RP, I'm like, I wouldn't want, as a world, I also wouldn't want to continue to like allow, or not allow, but continue to like enable those plot lines to continue to be played out to a heavy extreme that you'd allow it to if you allowed that sort of lack of power dynamic.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that plot.
No.
Obviously, I've done it before plenty of times. And I don't think it's even wrong for it to be present in our current role play. I mean, I can think about situations where it is, but you don't want that to be like the only thing in the role play. You
Oh,
know what I
100%.
mean?
And I was more referring, like, and I don't, like, you know me, I
Oh yeah.
love the power dynamics are the shit,
Hell yeah.
right? I love that. I don't mind that. But I guess for me, when I think of supernatural, I can think of like 4 right now ships that are the purpose of a human woman and a supernatural creature loving her and
Hmm.
protecting her.
Yeah. Like
Because
just
she
off the
can't
top of
protect
your head, right? If you think
herself. Like, off the
about
top.
media, like about any kind of supernatural media, like they just automatically pop into your head very easily.
Yes. And I'm like, and so like for me, I just wouldn't want to continue to see the entirety of that RP like allowing that. I want to explore other dynamics. I want, and if it involves a supernatural creature male protecting a weaker woman, that's totally fine. Like that's not what's wrong there. It's the fundamental like repeat of this trope that just happens so much
Yeah.
that as an author and as an RPer, it's like, okay, I've seen this played out 10,000 times.
Yeah, and I don't think there's
Done.
anything wrong with playing out the same things over and over necessarily. But I think
I
for us specifically, we have kind of an older group of role players, right? And we're not here offering, we're not here offering something that's really for newer role players. Like, let's be honest, like it's not. And so, we want to make sure that people feel empowered to go to do something else, right? Something that's not necessarily what everyone else is doing or what they've done 100 times. Now, if they want to come in and do the same thing they've done 100 times, that's absolutely allowed and that's valid. But we want to make sure that there's space to do other things too. And sometimes I feel like when you repeat those tropes, it can turn into a thing where other solutions are crowded out.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess for me it was more of like, it wasn't like an individual role
Mhm.
player with the tropes. It was the mass.
Yeah.
It's the mass, like what tropes draw people to your RP and stuff like that, and being
Yeah.
able to give a space where it's more than that, like you said, is important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think there's I mean, I mean, if you've watched my videos on my channel, like I'm never gonna say that this trope or that trope is bad or overused or da 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 da, because it
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
matter, right? Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you and your partner like doing it and you're happy. Yeah, level up again. Then it doesn't matter. Like play that trope over and over. Who cares, right? But I just think you have to think about that. Like when you're creating a role play group, it's also about who do you want to attract, right? Like who do you want to attract to your game? And so I think it really matters in that sense. Trying to
yeah.
figure
I
out
think
like
that's
is putting this in going to attract my ideal type of player.
Yeah, and I think that's also the difference is looking at something like supernatural species, the topic itself, and looking at it from a player perspective
Mhm.
and from a world builder perspective from
Mm-hmm.
someone who's building the world and wants to attract players versus what do I like to play? Because like I like to play everything, right? Corrupt, not corrupt, healthy dynamics, not healthy, mostly not healthy dynamics.
I mean, I got enough healthy in my real life, right? Like that's fine.
I my 100%, and I've always said that. And why not? Like writing is being able to explore what you do not know.
Yeah.
So heck yeah, I'm going to explore what I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's that interesting line and fine line of the difference between being someone who's creating the world and being someone who is playing in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just I think it's just worth thinking about. Like is when you're looking at your supernatural role play and you're figuring out like what species to add and whether you should add humans and things like that. Like you really have to go back to your basics, like who exactly am I trying to attract to my role play?
Mhm.
Is adding this in, is putting this in going to attract that type of person or role player, or is it going to be a turnoff for them? Right? Because you can't make a role play that everybody likes. Like you can't. Right? At the end of the day, I liken role play in a lot of ways to like dating or building clubs or things like that
Yeah,
are very interpersonal. So there's no one right answer ever because it's really about what do you want? Who do you want to attract? And how do you bring that person to the table and make them feel welcome at your table, right?
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
but
So yeah, the question of humans, just think about why you're adding them is essentially what it comes down to, right? Think about why you're adding them. And if you can clearly answer that question for yourself, then, you know, then you're good. But if you don't know the answer to that yet, then you need to think about it more. Marina has a question. So you're saying I
oh
could
yeah,
send in a female badass vampire hunter that could be killed by a Styx vamp and fire up that whole affair. Well,
yeah.
yeah, as an NPC, right? As an NPC, I think that would be wonderful. You know, if you had a reason for a plot where you know a vampire killed a vampire hunter, then yeah, that they'd be a great NPC. That'd be wonderful.
Listen, I have a built-in plot right now that could really use that, Marina. So like, let's go
Oh,
for it.
oh, oh! Let's make it happen.
Um, Crowley
Crowley
left
left.
behind a
Ah,
message.
ah.
Um, I'm gonna be completely honest and sit there and go, I'm very spoiled. I do not think I could ever play a huge, unless it was like set up True Blood style. I
Oh,
don't think I could ever play supernatural meets and humans existing where players can be both.
mm,
I don't think I personally would be either drawn to that, and I
hmm.
don't know if I could really see a world in which I would want to play out the characters that I'd want to play out
Do you think it's
in
kind of
that
just
book.
because the power dynamic between, and it's because what we've been talking about really is that it's this really goes back to like the power dynamic between the supernatural and the human characters is too much. That having them both being player characters is not, it doesn't feel appropriate because of that power
Yeah,
dynamic.
I think it's really just unfair. And I'm thinking of all like my repertoire of characters, right? And you know me and the viewers who may not know me is I like to play like the same 7
Oh,
characters.
same.
That's it. Like for the last 7 years, it's been like 7 characters that I like to reuse and rehash and maybe a new one will pop up, but then she probably actually represented an old one at some point. All that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, you're really just re-rolling the same like half dozen characters over another, and so am
Yeah,
I. You know, and so am
sometimes
I.
sometimes I rename them. Sometimes I don't realize I'm doing it. Like it actually hit me the other day that I played. Do you remember Jane from Yinzed?
Yes, I do.
I played
Sorry, it took
Jane.
me a second. I
No,
remember.
you're good. She's actually just Naima.
Oh,
And I didn't even make that connection. I was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, same character, right? Just
No, she
didn't know.
absolutely
Years
is.
later.
You're
Years
100%
later.
right.
So like it just that's how I do it is that I'm looking at my repertoire of characters and I go, all of the characters that I'd want to be supernatural
Good afternoon.
would just destroy the humans.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of the characters that I'm like, oh, they could be human, would just be destroyed by supernaturals.
Yeah.
Unless I was playing that specific like ship.
Mm-hmm.
But then I couldn't see them outside of that world, outside of that ship. It would just literally try to be navigating, how do I keep this character alive in order for this ship to work out?
Yeah. Which that can be fun in and of itself, but I do think there's certain
100%.
plots that lend themselves to like a one-on-one type of situation, right? And
Yeah.
there's certain plots that lend themselves to a group type of situation, right? And something that's so focused on a ship as that, I do feel like is more appropriate for a one-on-one situation. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's two different modes of role play. You know, a group versus a one-on-one. But I do
Yeah.
think there's certain things that are like, oh, that sounds great for a one-on-one, but in a group that sounds kind of like cheesy, right?
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think absolutely that's part of it. And I do want to say, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, True Blood I think is the only show that I can think of off the top of my head that really does do that like human vampire dynamic
Mm,
really well.
it does. It does. It does it really,
Um,
really well.
because like even Vampire Diaries didn't.
No.
I think True Blood does it extremely well, and it's like the only one that comes to mind that I'm just like, oh yeah, no, I guess that world you could balance it out correctly, but
It's
there was
harder though. It's harder.
you are absolutely right, Marina. One on one, you can both be special, 100%, and that's why people like one on one,
Oh yeah.
or or where it's like not even just one on one, but that they're building and doing a whole world build together, where it's only the two of them, and they all have like multiple characters. I
Mhm.
couldn't imagine it. I personally don't write that way.
A lot of people do though, and I do think that there's a lot of value in it, but it's all about what you're used to as well, right?
Yeah, and how best to tell the story too,
Yeah.
right? Like, and what are the pros and cons, and what are you looking for in a writer? What are you looking for in a world where there's so many different reasons on different ways that you RP that there are literally no wrong or right answers.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just about like making sure. I feel like a lot of my advice that I give on my channel boils down to like, what is it that you're looking for? To like
Hmm.
figure out what you're really looking for, and then once you figured that out, then go from there in building what you need to achieve what it is you're looking for. That's why I liken it to dating a lot, because I feel like dating is the same way. You know, there's not one right personality, there's not one right way to date. It's all about finding someone that meshes with what you feel is your truth, right? I
Yeah.
feel like role play is a lot the same way because it's a very interpersonal, intimate activity, just like dating. So you're
You
giving
say you're
dating
giving
advice. Yeah,
dating
I
advice.
mean, I kind of do think. I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Like y'all can tell me if I'm like Karen. You like chill out. Your ego is crazy. But I do feel like a lot of the advice that I give for role play can be applied to dating. I really do. Because it involves very similar dynamics that you're going through.
I mean, you are crazy, but not because of that.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome. No, but I do have to say that we're having this conversation, and I wonder if a little part of me is like, I wonder if we sound like married people giving advice to single people.
I mean, I think I do. I think I come off that way a lot. I think I come off that way a lot. I really do. Because I'm like, well, I've been successful in role play, and here's how you can be successful too. So, yes, 100%, I think we give that vibe. Is that a good vibe or a bad vibe? Like, I don't freaking know. But
It's fine.
I do
I
think that is our truth in a lot of ways.
No, but I was just like, yeah, no, I found my RP people. You'll find yours too. But wait, I got very, very fortunate and very, very lucky with the RP people I have. So
Yes. I mean, we just kind of stumbled into it, right? Like when we met, I joined a role play that someone else was really running. Like I know you were a part of creating it, but like it was really run by the other two mods. Like let's be real, it was,
it
and
was.
um,
Oh,
and
most of the RPs that I'm on, by the way, too. Like, let's be honest.
So like, we met on happenstance, and it just so happened that we were both at a point in our lives where we could easily, just maintain that friendship. I think that's a really a tough part of it, because I didn't really find like my role play people until age 27, right? Like I didn't meet
Yeah.
you and Shadow and Naomi and those people right until I was age 27. And part of that is because it just took a long time for me to get to a stable place in my life where I could really maintain a friendship over time. Like previously, just things would change and I would disappear from the internet, and I couldn't maintain internet friendships. I just couldn't until I had a very stable life and career. So
Yeah.
that's part of it, and I know that sucks for anybody hearing that, and they're thinking like, well, gosh, I'm 21 years old and I've been role playing since I was super young, and it hasn't happened for me yet. And it's like, yeah, I was the same way. I was the same way. It's just luck that I happened to come back to the hobby and find what I was looking for. But it did take years of me fully understanding what I was looking for, and that wasn't present in me until I was much more adult.
I was very fortunate as well because I was at a place where I literally was not capable of having in real life friends because I was almost in a hostage situation.
Oh
Not
yeah.
really for all those people listening, but it was an interesting situation that the access that I had to were internet friends.
Hmm.
And then I fell out of RPing for a little while. And then when I got back into it, when you kind of dragged me back into it, you were still
You
there.
came willingly. You came willingly.
I
Okay.
did 100% came willingly, lovingly, was like, hell yeah, I want to get back into that.
Yeah.
But you do have your ups and downs, and you do find your people, and some people stick around, some people don't, and it just also is where you're at right then and there to be able to build a friendship and build a relationship and figure out what makes it work for you.
Yeah. And that does
Oh,
take time.
it
Okay, so
does.
let's try to bring it back to supernatural species. I think we got off on a little tangent there. It was a good tangent.
A
Um
tangent? No way.
but I do want to bring it back.
Yeah.
So
So
so as far as, adding humans or other, non-supernatural elements into your roleplay, you just have to think about it. You just have to think about, does this attract the people I want it to attract? And if so, yeah, add it in. If it doesn't, if you think it won't, if you think instead it's going to more likely attract what you're not looking for, then don't put it in. Like, don't do something just because everyone else is doing it. Do it because it feels right for your game.
yep, I agree. Okay, so the next topic we had was how do you balance supernatural species and unfair power dynamics within the supernatural creatures?
Ah, yes,
So
yes.
for example, um I can't even think of an example, right? But right now, werewolves can sometimes be, let's take Twilight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Werewolves are so incredibly strong, powerful, fast that they are literally there and exist to kill vampires. That is the reason for them. So if they go up against a vampire, vampires are supposedly have no chance.
Yeah.
How do you take those lore items and those lore ideas, boil it down so that you can have multiple different species all be somewhat equal
Mm-hmm.
in power dynamics?
Yep.
Because that's a lot of things to do.
Yeah, so in a role play sense, like, you're not writing a novel by yourself, right? Like, you can very easily say, okay, in Twilight, the werewolves exist to be an antagonist to vampires, and therefore give them this power, this power, this power, right? Like, that's their purpose. Because the
Yeah.
purpose of Twilight, like the whole crux of the story, is Bella and Edward, right? And their romance, and how you could potentially have, a human and vampire type of romance. Like, what dynamic could that exist in? So the werewolves exist solely as an antagonistic element to that. But when we're talking about role play, you're not writing the story by yourself. So you have to kind of anticipate what other people might do with the tools that you give them, right? So you create the species that people can use for their characters, and then people are going to use them, right? So you have to sort of think a little bit about, like, how might people use this? Like, what's the logical extreme of this that I've written, and am I okay with that potentially happening in the game? Right? So I think that's a good starting point. Um I'm trying to think of an example of how we kind of
Like it
did it with Atlantis.
okay, well, um, okay. Mermaids, right? You don't think of mermaids as this ultimate
Okay, finish shopping for.
like protect like they're not supposed to be defensive, but they're also not offensive creatures. They kind of just exist within lore.
Hmm.
Unless they're underwater, in which
Yeah.
case they become, but like on land, they're supposed to just exist.
Hmm.
But then you also took out of that like two different species basically. You separated mermaids and sirens, even though their lore is so
It's very intertwined, right?
yeah, very intertwined with one another. You separated the two, and then you tried to figure out how do you balance that, right? How do you take sirens and make them separate from mermaid, different from mermaid, but also powerful in their own right? How do you take mermaids separate from sirens, different from sirens, but powerful in their own right?
Hmm. So when it comes to those two species, I'm thinking about like, okay, what dynamics do I think people will like to play? Like, what do I think that people will be interested in? And when it comes to any underwater species, like the ocean is a whole different world, right? It's very mysterious. Something that I've heard before, and this is, take this with a grain of salt. I don't know if it's true. It probably depends on the context, but in a lot of ways, we know more about space than we know about the deep oceans of our own planet. It's very,
True.
very mysterious. We don't know what goes on down there. So I think that's like an element, right? And so you kind of give that, yeah, true. So yeah, Marina, I agree with that. So like, we give that element to mermaids in a way, right? And a lot of people have used mermaids as like, they have this whole underwater civilization because I think there's a line, and this is I can't me not remembering what I freaking wrote, right? But there's like a line I think in the mermaids that says, that they have these vast underwater cities and things like that, and people have used that a lot. So we give that element to them. So what that means then is, okay, well that element's taken, right? Like that element's taken. It can't go to anyone else. There can be no other vast underwater towns, because then it becomes blurred. The line becomes blurred, and when someone makes a mermaid, maybe or they make something else, they end up adding in mermaid things. It's like, well, that kind of belongs to a mermaid, right? Because the whole point of when you're creating a character, something you have to remember is that everybody wants to feel special. So you have
Yeah.
to make sure that when you're designing your different player characters in the role play, like when you're designing your mermaid, what's going to make someone feel special about playing a mermaid, right? What's going to make someone feel special is that mermaids have this entire underwater civilization that's mysterious, and they're very proud of it, right? So that, oh, we got a buzzlegum. Sweet. He eats the buttercups, so that's probably why we got one. So we have a lot of buttercups in the garden right now. So that's something that's going to inspire them. And then what we have to do is, if you think about sirens, like, okay, well, what's going to inspire someone about a siren? So for that, it's pretty simple. We know role players love taboos, right? Cannibalism's a big one. Hannibal,
Yep.
when they remade Hannibal, it's popular for a reason, right? People freaking love that stuff. So
True.
when it comes to sirens, and you think like, okay, well, let's put in something that's going to make people drawn to sirens, and that's the element of them being cannibals. And so you have those initial starting elements, and then what I typically do is I think about like a lot of how does other media portray these things, and how can I add that in? So you think about sirens; they're based on the Greek myths, right? The Greek myths of them luring sailors in
Yeah.
to crash on the rocks. So if we think of these like cannibal creatures that are singing and they're luring sailors into the rocks to crash, well, that's like that's their element. So we can build on that. So sirens, in addition to eating the flesh of people, they have this song that has a certain power, and the player gets to pick their power, right? So what I'm trying to do there is then within the siren species, you can further uniquely identify your siren by having a special song. Okay, so they get a special song, and the song influences people in one way or another, and you get to decide exactly how your siren song influences people. So not only are you unique from mermaids by having this cannibal element, by having this singing element, you have you have a way to differentiate yourself among the other sirens. And then when it comes to mermaids, if their main thing is having this, vast underwater uh, civilization that they have, what's their unique thing? Okay, well, let's give them something that kind of goes in with that pride. So when I think of that, I think of like, okay, well, there's visual differences, right? You kind of think about visual differences and pride as a two very interlinked things. People who are very prideful tend to be very concerned with their appearance. So the unique thing among the mermaids is you can pick what kind of fish your tail resembles. So maybe you get something like, Eugene is a goldfish, right? So he has a goldfish tail, and it's very beautiful and frilly and bright orange and all of these things. And then we have the character of Ren in the role play, who has a tail of a of a lionfish, right? So she's got this element of like, well, she's a little bit dangerous, right? So that's like their unique element. So those are the things that are going to draw people to
Okay.
those. Um, so I think
So
let's pause there and see if you have questions, because I
yeah,
want to talk about weaknesses, how I choose the weaknesses next. But that's kind of like an experiment of my thought process for choosing. How am I going to draw people to this type of character?
that makes a lot of sense because I'm drawn to like lore, right? But it sounds like you start from blank slate. You don't I mean obviously you said that like sirens are drawn from Greek mythology and you piecemealed that, but you didn't like sit there and be like, okay, how can I take the Greek mythology of sirens and modernize it?
Oh yeah, no, I
You
don't do
didn't
that.
start there and then grow from there. So you didn't start from a particular mermaid lore. We'll take Little Mermaid just because shits and giggles.
Yeah.
You didn't
Everybody,
start
because
with
everybody
Little
loves
Mermaid.
Little Mermaid, right?
Exactly. You didn't start with Little Mermaid and then go, okay, how can I get her to fit into this RP? You literally were like, okay, let me think what comes to mind with mermaids, and then what do I know about Matt? Like, what are some things that come to mind, and then what does that best fit? So you can have multiple different places that you're basically picking fruit from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't necessarily start with something and then build from there. I mean, sometimes I do. Like shifters, I absolutely did. Like well, for that
Animorphs.
I stole it whole cloth from Animorphs, right? Like let's not pretend like it's something different, right? So sometimes I do that, but most of the time I'm not. Like most of the time, what I'm really thinking about is, okay, what elements do I think that the role play needs that people will be attracted to, and how can I work those in to the species in this case that I'm setting up, right?
Okay.
Like, I know people like this. I know people like writing cannibalism. How do I make that happen in the role play? I know people think, like, hidden cities are cool. How do I work that into the role play? Like, I know people think, like, pixies is a good example. I know people think transmutation magic is cool. How do I give people transmutation magic to play with, right? Like, so that's the direction that I'm typically going. And then, of course, then I look at the lore and say and pull that in, because I do think there's something to be said for like, okay, well, if people see XYZ, they expect ABC, so let's make sure they get ABC, right? So like when it comes to vampires, for example, there's certain things people expect, and you have to clarify if that's not the case. So people expect them to need blood to survive. People expect them to have an adverse reaction to the sun. People expect there to be some kind of thing with garlic, whether it be like an actual garlic allergy or just a joke, like haha, or something like that. It's not real.
Yeah.
So like people have expectations around these species because of how they've been portrayed in other media. So you have to really think about what do people expect and how do I work that in as well. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like starting from a place of lore and building from there. But I do think you have to come to that from a sense of like, I want to make sure that I address the things that people are going to expect, because if you don't, what you end up with is you wrote something so unique that no one can properly engage with it, and we don't want that
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, I think that's very difficult too, is also recognizing that when people start out in the RP, they're not as enmeshed and engaged and as like invested into the
Hmm.
world that you've just built, and so
Yeah, I
you
mean
really
they're
do
they're
need to be
new. Why
bold.
would they be? Right? Why do they
Exactly.
care? We're still selling it to them. Like, they wouldn't
You
be.
need to, yeah, I think that's a very interesting way of that I personally had. I was like, oh yeah, of course you're selling them. You're selling this. You need to you need to make it so that it's things that people like and not just necessarily things that you like.
Yeah.
Um, so did you want to talk about weaknesses? I think I
Yes.
had, yes.
Yeah, I just felt like I was talking a lot, and I was like, I needed to shut up for a second to make sure
No,
I've not missed
no,
something. Um,
no, you're
and
good. I think, well, like, and I think that's also interesting, and it's a lot happening at once, so we need to make sure that we're following along with it. So,
yeah. Oh, Jamelians. When you get a lot of different color of those flutterscotches, like I've been doing a lot today, these guys come. They're
yeah.
so cool. They're so cool.
Ooh.
Um,
What are they
so
called?
Jamelians. They're jam
Okay,
chameleons.
so I don't know why, but like the catch a chameleon song, like the I don't even know the song or the tune, but it's like da 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 da. I don't know. Popped into my head, and I was just like, chameleons. What is this?
I always think of the Karma song, Karma 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 Karma
That's what I was
Chameleon.
saying.
Oh
It's
yeah,
such
that
a
one. Come and
long word.
go, come and go. Whoa, whoa.
Sounds about right.
um, yeah. So then the other big part of this is of designing different species is the weaknesses, right? You want to make sure that you've created something that can be harmed, because what the hell is the point of the role play if there's not potential for conflict or harm, right? You're writing a story, or at least I am. Like at the end of the day, we're writing stories. I know not every role play is like this, right? Some role plays exist, as slice of life, and they really are conflict averse by nature, and that's fine. But that's just not what I'm building, right? I'm not building that. So when I think of like the weaknesses, I think of like, okay, if we have this, and this, how do we put in something that thematically resonates with all of those elements, and and then it gives you a tool to hurt this character if needed, right?
Hmm.
So I think mermaids are a good example of this. So this comes directly from the Little Mermaid. So this is where I am pulling from lore. Like in the Little Mermaid, right? She wishes for legs and she gets legs. So and there is a lot of mermaid lore that goes back and forth between the mermaid, the fish out of water, right? The mermaid on land versus
Yeah.
the mermaid in the water. Like an old show is that probably not a lot of people have seen. It was an Australian show, but I watched it because my girl Phoebe Tonkin was in it. But that H2O mermaid show, and it's about these three teenage
Such a
girls.
good
Sorry,
show, by the
it
way.
was it
Such
was
a good
really
show,
good.
by the way.
It was really good, but it's essentially about these three teenage girls that get like cursed into turning into mermaids, and whenever they get wet, they're mermaids, but then when they dry off, they're not anymore, right? So they have to navigate that, like and it does all the silly things like, oh, what happens if you go to a pool party? How do you take a shower? Like, it's very silly. So when I think of mermaids, and it's really about them having a tail and people wanting to explore that fish out of water, and having this old civilization that they're proud of. Okay, well, we need something that causes them to have to question that, them to feel out of place, them to have to deal with potential humiliation and that sort of thing. So then their weakness becomes like, okay, well, if they get wet, then they have a fin. They lose their legs if they get wet. So now if there's like a hurricane that comes through the island, okay, well, all the merfolk better get inside because they're going to be screwed. They're going to get way too wet, right? And the intention is not to be like super like into the rules when I'm doing weaknesses. It really is about how it reflects like thematically and narratively, right? So I don't necessarily mean like, oh, this mermaid was working out on a treadmill and they got super sweaty and now they have a fin. Like that's not the intention, right? The intention is to give them a way to grapple with the other side of what they're dealing with. Because if what attracts you to playing a merfolk in this role play is that pride of their previous civilization and their fish out of water sense, okay, well then their weakness needs to be something related to humiliation, right? So that's how I think of the weaknesses, is how do I thematically connect the other side of what makes this type of character cool.
I think your sirens ones are amazing as well. The fact that it's this creature that is meant to hunt and draw people in. Like that's their power, right? Is to
Yeah.
hunt. Their goal is to hunt humans, and their power is to have a song that is meant to engage some sort of emotion or some sort of reaction, whether that be chaos, obedience, whatever, or just being beautiful. It's supposed to engage something.
Yeah.
And then
Something
their
that
weak,
makes you, go to them and be around them.
yeah, and then their weakness is that that their monster nature is literally shown on their skin by having scales, by having um, mostly scales, but also teeth and claws, and that they do not look or blend in as humans. That they're predatory is shown on their skin, and I think that's an awesome like contrast, but also speaks to how like that really does even the playing field for that.
Right. Yeah, because if they're so deadly, then we need something, to combat that, right? Like when we talk about, we can take vampires as a good example. Like they can also be deadly, right? They can
Yeah,
can drink blood. So one of the things that I did to vampires to kind of even them out in this role play is I did not make them physically strong, right? Like physically they are relatively weak. Now they have some other things, right? Like I like the idea of vampires flying, so they can become weightless and they can be fast if they want to, right? But and they have like some strength, but they're not like it's not like crazy, right? Like there are definitely other supernaturals that are stronger than them, right? And I didn't do the garlic is a myth thing. Like the garlic is real. Um, so when it comes to vampires in this role play, they're not as crazy strong, I feel like, as they are portrayed in a lot of other media, if that makes
well, yeah,
sense.
I agree because the vampires are very much like if I had to choose any sort of creature that really was like top of the food chain,
Mm-hmm.
it would be vampires.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Possibly fast. In some lores, can turn into a bat. In some lores, can just fly. In some lores, undead, beautiful
Yeah,
hunters can blend
like they're
in. Doesn't
everything.
blend in.
In a lot of lores, they're freaking everything.
And literally, the only weakness that they have is that they can't go out into the sun.
Yeah,
And sometimes garlic.
yeah,
Well, boo hoo,
yeah. Like it's
right?
not. It's like it gives. It's like they have all the power and no weakness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I do that like that weaknesses of and the measuring expectations as far as like acknowledging some of the lore
Mm-hmm.
that you were saying before, but not giving into all of it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to like supernatural role plays, you end up with a. Oh my gosh, and they did a fertility doctor. Yes, so that's
Only,
an.
but here's the other thing: only if they want to procreate in that way, right? The way vampires procreate are to create other vampires.
Yeah.
Like if we're going on species, but in order like for Atlantis and plot wise, I agree with you. Sorry, I just that was
Mm-hmm.
a pedestal thing.
Oh my gosh, that was too funny though. Um, so yeah, so like when it comes to creating, supernatural species to all exist in a role play, I think you have to really think about like if, what am I going to do when I'm building this to really engage players and make them feel like their character is special. Like I don't want anyone to ever feel like, well, I picked this species and they're super underpowered, right? Like of
Yeah,
course, if we look at all the species, I'm sure you could rank them and figure out which ones have more powers than others. Like it's impossible to make them completely even, right? But I do think it's important to put in some kind of effort to that, because what's going to happen if you don't is you end up with species that no one wants to play, right? Because there's no real hook. There's nothing that's like, oh, this is so cool, I want this, and if you have a species that's all power and no weakness, then you end up with the opposite problem, where the people that want to play them are all of these sort of like min-maxer types, which, if you're a min-maxer and you like that and that's you're building a role play for min-maxers, you go have fun with that, right? But that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to build a story. And when there's multiple people essentially controlling the story, then you kind of need to have like you need to have things in there that give those characters weaknesses, because you're not the one person writing it, which means that if it's just one person writing it, you can make something totally OP but then never actually write the OP parts, right? And that's
Yeah,
okay. But when it's in a role play, like, someone's going to come in and write those OP parts. They are.
100%.
So you just got to be careful with that, I think.
Um, Also, like, the idea of having multiple species and some species being more powerful than others, I think is totally acceptable, especially if the, like, so I like it in RRP that the most powerful creatures do not necessarily mean that they are the powerful people of the city.
Yes, that's true, because there's a lot more to it, because that particular role play is also a mob role play. So
Yeah,
money is power. Like, that's,
money is power,
yeah,
family is power,
yeah.
persuasion and people are power, which means that, like, I personally believe that sirens, they got it made, right? As far as power goes, for the most part, it depends on what their song is, but they have it made as far as being the powerful species.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They have the
they're,
most
they're
potential to be
Yeah,
the
they have
most
the most
dangerous.
potential. They draw people in. They got teeth. They got them claws. They're
Yeah,
back. They're the supreme predator
absolutely.
for the most part. But, like, no one who's a siren is in charge of anything. Like,
Yeah.
yes, some of them have, like, individual small power, but as far as the mob goes, like,
We have one. We have the underboss for Medea that's a
yeah.
siren, but neither of the bosses or any of the government officials are
But
sirens.
even but even then, Yudi is pretty much I mean, she almost separates her sirenness and her mob bossness too, and it's just a very interesting
Yeah. I mean, I
way
don't
that
know.
being played in.
Vi's not here, so she can't speak for it. But I think
Yeah,
that
that's
that
true.
speaks to, like, you know, there's more to gaining power than just being strong, right? And I think that's
Yes.
true in the real world too. Like, just because you're 6 foot tall and all shoulders and and can punch through anything you want, that doesn't necessarily mean you're the strongest. There's other ways to gain strength in our world, and I think that's true in the world that we've created for the role play as well.
Yeah, I think that's also a good fact of to acknowledge that also, like, these species are a facet of the character. They're not the
Mm-hmm.
entirety of the character.
Absolutely.
Merfolk, yes, they can be proud and happy of where they came from, but also there's so much more than that. Just like being an American or being someone from Germany
Yeah.
isn't all someone is.
Yeah, Samir says get pulled out of the ocean by the right person, for instance. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, sometimes in life you just get freaking lucky, right? You just get born to the right family. You just make friends with the right people. Like, sometimes that's what happens. And it doesn't, and the species isn't everything, right?
Yep. I agree.
Like, it helps, but it's not everything.
But it is not everything.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of most of the topic that we had to discuss as far as supernatural goes,
Okay.
that we had planned out, and we only have about a little less than 15 minutes
Yeah.
on the stream.
Yeah. So we've
So
got So do we have anybody that had questions or wanted to come on and chat with us? I
no,
don't
no
see
questions, no people.
Ty here today, but Marina, if you want to come on, you can. But yeah, we've got about 15 more minutes. Did we have anything fun? Like, I know we looked at that oh, what was it? The Ants on a Log article. Do we have anything fun maybe we could talk about for the last 15 minutes?
Yes, I so happened to pull an article that I thought was fun.
Oh, let's do
Um,
it.
and just a little, like, bring joy to us.
Okay.
I wanted to discuss the wolffish.
What is a wolffish?
A wolffish has a funny face. His blood is made, or he's got antifreeze in his blood, and he loves to couple with divers. And it is the world's ugliest fish, in my opinion.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
they the best way to describe them is big bulgy eyes and weird ass teeth, and they were pulled something from the ocean, which, as we had said earlier in the stream, we know about, like, nothing about the deep ocean.
We don't. Like, it's so mysterious. So I think that's so funny that you have something that's like a deep ocean
Yeah.
thing. Just so that everybody can see on stream, I'm actually gonna pause the game for just a second and let me pull up this article. Uh, he needs braces.
It
Probably.
needs braces. It
Let's
really
see.
does.
Holy crap!
I think
I see why he's called Wolffish.
um so yeah, that's the beautiful wolffish who's my buddy for the day, I've decided. Lives on the ocean floor, likes to hunt in rocks, usually found in temperatures between -1 and 11 degrees Celsius,
Oh my
which is
gosh.
pretty cold.
Okay.
Uh,
So I
they have like a natural antifreeze in their bloodstream.
let's click play
To
on
keep
this
them,
video. It says they like to cuddle divers. I assume this
yeah,
video is starting at a
Beauty, so
point
they
where
say, lies in the eye
we're
of
gonna
the
see some
beholder.
cuddling. We're not gonna watch a whole 29-minute video, of course, but I just want to. Hopefully, they'll show a
And
clip.
some wreck divers only come here for
Of some
one
cuddling.
reason.
Well, maybe
I
not.
can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure these
To
aren't very
meet
big,
what
right?
must
Like
be
they're not
the
that big of
predator
a fish.
with the
I mean, they're not
ugliest
like
face.
giant squid-sized fish, but they're not. I mean, they make a nice meal, I guess.
In fact, the wolffish has
So
a
what I
rather
need someone to
remarkable
do then is
characteristic
to make a
besides its
merfolk. Oh my god, they are
appearance.
kind of big actually. I need somebody to make a merfolk based on a dogfish or a wolffish.
Yeah, please.
Oh, it just comes right up
For
to the
a
diver.
fish,
Holy
it's
crap.
unusually affectionate and not at all aggressive.
He looks kind of more like an eel than a fish, doesn't he?
He does.
Deep sea creatures are so weird.
They're aliens. Here's the thing,
Oh
right?
my gosh,
Quite
he
the
really is
contrary.
cuddly.
I have
Many a diver
I
has
have
made
a
friends with
I have a
his or
theory that all things deep sea, deep water actually are aliens.
I mean, I believe it.
Okay, but here's a fun fact that I heard earlier oh my god, it is huge. Sorry. Earlier this week was that we have no idea how eels are born or where they come from.
What? We don't?
Like
Nobody
we
knows
don't
that?
know nobody knows the mating habits of eels.
Oh,
It was something, it was like a little mini, I should have saved the article, but it was like a little neat mini article about like how we don't know if it's live birth or egg birth or what the mating habit is or anything. We know nothing about where eels come from. They just keep happening.
so there's a really good then master's thesis in there for some
Please.
marine biologist. Any marine biologist listening? Probably not. But if you are, there you go. There's your master's thesis. Holy crap. I can't believe that we don't know a bit more about that. I feel like somebody must. That feels so wrong. But maybe not.
It,
Like, we don't study the ocean very much, and that's
it
something I've
feels
heard before.
it feels very uncomfortable. I'm not sure I like it. But the fun fact that what made me think of this is that the wolffish, they have like sex much akin to mammals, and then the woman or the female fertilizes the eggs internally
Oh,
and
okay.
incubates them within her body for 4 to 9 months,
Oh my gosh. So it really
and
is
then
just like a
lays
mammal.
them, and then 4 months later they hatch.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is crazy.
these they're aliens. This is my official opinion. Uh, we're being invaded by aliens, and they look like wolffish.
I mean, they're pretty horrendous looking. They kind of remind me of like, you know that blobfish that you see sometimes. There's like a meme picture of it. They kind of reminded me of that, except they have the crazy teeth, which I don't think that the blobfish has crazy teeth like that. They just kind of blobs.
Teethless blobs.
Yeah. But
But
oh my gosh, that is crazy.
yeah. So that's your fun little warm and fuzzy article for this for this wonderful Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, so somebody take the merfolk species from the document that I linked, or if you're in Atlantis, you can make it in Atlantis, and make a merfolk based on the wolffish.
It's wet and fishy though.
It's very eel-like, very eel-like.
Yeah, just like no, actually, I love underwater like world in the deep sea. I am fascinated by it. I have no scientific brain whatsoever, so I could never be a marine biologist.
Yeah.
But I do love sea creatures and animals, even if they are aliens.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very cool, and I know a lot of people are like they have kind of a fear of the ocean, right? Because it's very unknown and very dark and deep. I don't really have that. I've always, been close to the water, grown up close to the ocean, so I don't have that. I think this stuff is cool, but it still kind of wows me when I see something that looks so crazy and alien as that.
Yeah.
Like that's even more so than you would expect.
See, I totally don't mind. For whatever reason, lakes scare me so much more than the ocean does.
Really? I don't think I've
Yeah,
ever heard that take before. Why lakes?
leeches.
Oh, leeches.
I don't like
Okay.
blood-sucky things, which is funny because I like vampires.
So didn't we open this stream today talking about vampires? I'm pretty sure we did.
We did. They're the only blood-sucky things that I tolerate. But yeah, but I grew up in Colorado, so what the heck is a lake, first of all?
No, all
but I
you'll have
also-
there is just flat plains and a couple mountains, right? Like that's it. That's what
and-
South Park taught me.
Yeah, I mean, literally, yeah. Except in early spring, early summer, when all of the runoff is melting from the mountains, and then we have rivers, but only during like those 3 months of the year.
Wow.
And then we have man-made reservoirs, which don't really count.
Yeah, that's not the same thing.
And
That's not the same thing at
I've
all.
also learned since moving to Maine that the things that I thought were reservoirs and lakes are actually ponds.
Oh.
And now, as a Mainer, I have seen real lakes, and they're big.
That's too funny. It's all relative, right? It's relative to what you're used to. So you would call
Fun
it
fact.
a lake, but then it's like you see a real lake and it's like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing here. I laugh at everyone who calls most of the mountains here in New England mountains, because I'm just like, that's funny.
Yeah, on the East Coast, what mountains we do have, like the Appalachia area is nothing compared to the Rockies. They're like
No.
completely night and day. They are both mountains, though. All mountains are valid.
You know what? There are two valid mountains here on the like New England side of things. Everything else is just hills.
Oh my gosh, can't agree. But of course, as you know, I live in the swamp. We don't have any
That's
mountains. Like we have if there's a slight incline in the road, like that's like amazing for us. Like whoa, roller coaster.
Well, honestly, if people want to cancel me because of my opinions on mountains, they can. I guess.
I mean, I already have. Let's start a hashtag.
All mountains are valid.
All mountains are valid, Landon. All mountains are valid.
Sorry. Yes, a little hill and call it a mountain.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I'm counting how many yellow flutterscotches I have.
No,
I have 4 of them.
You did.
Okay.
How dare you?
All right. So we've kind of gotten to the point in this game where the progress is gonna start to slow down a little bit. So you'll notice I don't get as many levels in the 2-ish hours that we're doing streaming. And we're kind of going through this stuff. So we still haven't quite gotten the final expansion, but I wasn't expecting to. I'm hoping maybe next stream we can. Like, let's see what level I'm at. We're at level 16, and I think we get it at level 20. So we'll try to get that next time. I just wanted to get some flutterscotches going because I know the next sour pinata that we're gonna get, the Profitimal, he needs to eat these 2 mushrooms and some red flutterscotches. So I wanted to do some of that today. But
I do have to say that our garden has gotten very big.
yes, it has gotten
Done a
bigger, but
very
it's gonna
good
get bigger
job.
one more time. It's gonna get bigger one more time. So
Yay!
so we'll kind of go from there. Let me see. I want to go see what Costalot has actually before we wrap things up. See if she has anything that I might need to get, because she will sell you, upgrades to stuff. So I think let's go ahead for next time and get that upgrade. Yep. Oh, that's not what I meant to click. We're gonna get the golden watering can too. Can I not get it? What's happening? Something. My mouse wouldn't go to it. There we go. So we're gonna make things a little easier on ourselves and get those. And I think she has I wanted to say she had shovel upgrades for us too, but maybe not. Okay, let's go back and let's see if Ivor has any upgrades that we might want to get to kind of make our next time a little bit easier.
Today has been a good day for customers.
So he has the chocolate sniffer, so let's get that. What that's going to do is whenever I use the shovel, it's going to find chocolates in the ground. Glass watering can. I think the gold watering can is better, so I think I don't want to buy that. Let me just make sure. Best watering can, Viva Pinata.
A glass watering can. I'm just trying to picture that in real life and be
Yeah, that
like,
would be
"That's
really
very
weird."
aesthetically beautiful, but like, I'd be so afraid to break it.
Yeah, I would not be practical, right? Okay, so that is
Yeah.
better than the gold one, so we are gonna get that upgrade too.
And I feel like in order to like
Acquire some more of those.
withstand the pressure of more water, it would have to be pretty decently like heavy glass.
Yeah, it would have to be super insulated, so that there wouldn't be issues with that. So that would be weird. Okay, so we got those upgrades. Okay, so that'll be better for next time, and we'll make some more progress. I'll try to get attract some more expensive pinatas so we can kind of move forward with the game and actually start really building out each garden the way I want to build it out. But yeah, I think that's it. We're basically kind of at our normal ending time. We'll pick back up here next week, same time, same place. If you're watching right now and you have not followed the Twitch channel, I would ask you, please go ahead and follow the Twitch channel. That way you can get notified whenever I'm streaming again. And of course, if you're not yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more roleplay advice that's a little bit more condensed than this, right? Like on this, me and Landon are really having more of a conversation. We're not necessarily, making statements about like, here's good things to do and not do. It's more of a conversation. But on there, I'm giving like specific advice and rubrics you can attempt to use if you're struggling with certain things in roleplay. So yeah, I think that's the things that I want to promote. Landon, do you have any closing statements?
Well, do you want to promote your Instagram and Patreon?
Oh yeah, I have an Instagram too if you want to follow me there. It's mostly just a feed of my videos. Same thing for Twitter. When it comes to Twitter though, that is a place where I do post a lot more, of my raw thoughts and things like that. So that is 18 plus only. If you're a kid and you're following me there, I'm very sorry, I'm gonna block you. But if you are welcome to follow me on Instagram, if you're underage, that's fine. And I have a Facebook page as well that I literally don't do anything on. I just post the videos. So, but if that's an easier way for you to keep up with what I'm doing, you're welcome to like my Facebook page as well. And lastly, you are welcome to join our Discord. That is especially useful if you are somebody looking for roleplay advice that has a very specific question, a very specific situation. Hop into our Discord, and we have lots of people there that will chat with you, not just me. Like, I think that the Discord is very helpful for somebody looking for advice because you can get advice from lots of different people at the same time. So please hop in our Discord if you're interested in that.
Yeah, right now I don't currently have any projects or anything interesting happening. So my advice to you is to stay safe and don't forget to be awesome.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to follow me on Instagram, it's Land in Maine.
Yes. And her Instagram's great, so y'all should probably go follow it if you're interested. And hopefully at some point we'll have some things for Landon to promote as well.
I'm hoping that once this whole situation gets back to some sort of normalcy, there will be a podcast perhaps, but we'll see.
I'm crossing my fingers that picks back up too. Yeah, so I guess what I'll leave y'all with is COVID is still here. It is still an issue. Please only go out if you have to, and please, if you do go out, wear a mask. Don't be stupid. Make sure that you're keeping yourself safe and you're keeping your loved ones safe. And yeah, that's it. We're signing off now.
Bye.
Bye guys. Have a great day.